bluegrass in the Appalachians, right, and taking their stories for the Smithsonian and collecting stories of all the people, and I would write them in the newspaper, and people loved the stories, and they were, some of them were Bigfoot, but some of them were how they learned to play the mandolin or brought them over from the old country, and a fiddle, or difference between a violin and a fiddle. So, but there's got to be some cultures in there that Jack and Rich can bring together from the old country or Europe. I went to Spain and Madrid and other places, Lisbon, and I love traveling the world, but, I can't do that like I could because of the money situation, plus the government was paying me to travel. But, you know what I'm getting at? It's like people really do live, even during COVID-19. We're going to have some wonderful artists, but if Jack can leave us his legacy and his history orally now, and, I know my husband, I go back and listen to my radio shows, and I remember a part that I'd forgotten about him. And I know someday that Rich is going to go back and listen to this story with Jack, and it's going to melt his heart. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So
that's
what I'm talking about. I'm going to mute now.
Okay. The oral history is not as accepted in Western culture as it is in other cultures. The American Indians place a great deal of emphasis on the bloodlines that create great storytellers. And storytelling as an oral history of a way of keeping track of what our history is as humans is valid in other parts of the world. But in Western culture, the oral history is not considered a valid history. Only a written history is considered valid. And there's something very, very different that happens when a person tells their story, and they make a recording of what their history is about. And I am always sort of amazed at that. One of the things that I always find sort of interesting is that the Kabbalah was not ever meant to be written down. It was meant to be an oral history that was told from father to son, and it was studied in rabbinical groups, and it was a story. It was a human story. So I think sometimes, and I'm an avid reader of the First Order, I think sometimes we lose the insight and the appreciation for the story that is just the spoken story. It's just as valid. It's just as important. And one of the last vestiges of where the oral history actually has a valid place today in society is in the 12-step groups. In the 12-step groups, people tell their story, it's recorded, and that is a person's oral history. So I want to ask Jack and Rich if they would like to have a conversation. I'll mute, and they can listen, and we're all together in the house. So if one of you wants to come and sit in the back of the house and do the phone call, that's fine, because we can't have any crossover. Okay? So, Rich?
Yes, she's called me.
Rich?
Okay, yeah, I'm here. Okay, Jack's outside having a fag.
That's fine. Can you come inside and sit in the back so there's no crossover? Outside having a fag. It means something else in England. It's a term for having a cigarette. And when you get to be 89 years old, nobody has to tell you if you smoke cigarettes you won't grow to be old, because Jack's already done it. So we can't scold him that way. But anybody else is open to scolding. Okay.
So what?
Okay.
So what are we getting at? I think you want to ask Jack how he started. What's his story? He was in the military.
I want you to do that with him, but you have to be enough distance from one another that there's no feedback on the lines.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, Jack, can you
I'm going to go
me?
mute. I'm going to go mute.
Okay. Jack, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, tell the world your story about how you got started. You were in the military. You're working for your dad. All sorts of stuff. So what made you become an artist? I mean, actually become an artist, personally.
Well, I think a lot of it was due to this call Safe Hollow I mentioned in Long Beach Academy of Art. I had a girlfriend, and she took me down there when I was about 11 years old or something, and then I just kept popping in and popping out, and of course he did different courses that were quite interesting, and so I got hooked on the whole concept, and he was a very very amazing teacher. He was quite outstanding. He needs recognition because he didn't ever get it from around Long Beach, and they didn't have. He was sort of like an island of serious thought. He was from Vienna originally, and so it was I was quite fortunate on that. And so he taught philosophy also, and I think he actually conditioned people to see a little broader perception.
So what was the jumping off point for you? You said you sold your house and you had the kids and the wife and the family. So what was the jumping off point for you to live the life of an artist, not just learn it, but live it?
Well, it's sort of when I was in business with my dad, and so then I dropped out of that, and then I was doing handyman work and ordinance and so on and so forth to kind of getting by there, and I had money and so forth. But it just came to a point where I realized I wasn't developing anything within myself, and of course the ideas I was hearing about art just kept fascinating me, and so I started drawing and painting, and then this teacher was quite good, and he didn't encourage, he just sort of set a level, which was quite good. He was a good teacher, and so I just carried on with that. So I was finally going every chance I could get to do that, and I think one of the things, it was sort of like a question of seeing beauty. And this is strange. It popped up to me the other day that I was thinking about what sort of turned me on that thing. And I've been studying the model. They bring in these models and all that stuff, and the nude and all that stuff. And it used to really shock my mother and whatnot. But I would draw the model, and so that was that. It was just like drawing a sunset. But one day I was there, and I was pulling up to go in to that, and there was a girl walking out of the studio, and somehow or another, I focused on every pretty girl there was, or anything like that. But then I saw her legs, and I saw her legs from an anatomy point of view, and I could see the mechanics in it, and I could, I was sort of like X-raying her entire structure of her body automatically. And so I thought, well, I'm making progress. And so I went from there. I just kept getting more interested.
So you took your family, and you bought a school bus. Tell us that story.
Well, that comes somewhat after. That's why I've gone back to the States from Mexico. Actually, I bought the school bus, but I just couldn't handle the system. It didn't suit me anymore, and so that's why I got the school bus, and just took off. And so I fixed the school bus up real nice, comfortable. I put a bathtub in and everything. And so we weren't uncomfortable, but we were kind of shocking people. When I got to the border and Mexico, and I was trying to get in with this bus and everything like that, and the younger guy wouldn't touch it. And then what was really quite miraculous, when I was going through there, I just turned 33, and he looked at my passport and he says, "Mismo edad de Cristo, pásale." He says, "You're the same age as Jesus. Go on through." So that got me in, and so you get into sort of strange situations like that. And then I picked people up in the bus because they had lots of room and there people walk along the road, so I picked them up. And I just got into Mexico, kind of catching on as I went along how gracious they can be and how much openness there was down there. So I fell in love with Mexico, basically.
So you arrived on the coast and you set up a school?
Yeah. And they set up. I set up classes there, and I was doing teaching there, and then that just carried on. I had a number of students, and I taught in the local Posada and I was teaching around different places like that, and so the teaching just kind of came natural to me, and I enjoyed teaching. And I enjoyed discussing the ideas, and they put you in the same framework as a student in a way, and so you have to be able to explain it and analyze it and so on and so forth. So teaching is sort of like an integral part of my life. The place I have now, it's not nothing to do with economics or anything like that. I get in teach students and do workshops because it's it's a good. It seems to keep it alive, you know.
Yeah, what you're teaching is not. What you're teaching is not just how to draw, how to paint. It's more of a. When I was there, you taught about art theory. You talked about philosophy. You talked about the deeper meaning of being an artist and the art lifestyle. One of your favorite books was The Artist's Way.
Yeah. That was good. Very good. It was a whole. And there I felt I had nature. I had sort of enough isolation there, and I had an ambiance with all the village. It was a beautiful village, and so it was quite perfect to I think the students over in the village, and they would be really quite excited, you know. And I just did it lucky, and then of course the place I had was an old olive mill, so it was 50 meters long and 11 meters wide, and so we took all the old machinery out, and so I had a large studio and workrooms, and so we worked with models, we worked with everything. It's really quite exciting.
If anybody is close to a computer right now, you should look up Finca El Cerrillo. Cerrillo, and so you get an idea what we're talking about. And again, this was real Spain. It wasn't Madrid. It wasn't a city. This was real Spain. I mean, real Spaniards. And when you're a foreigner coming into the village had a life that was been going on forever. But again, you're trying to teach people not just art, but what would you like to express to your students as far as art goes? How it's a lifestyle, or how it's a growth. You always said you had a growth center, art and growth center. What did the growth center mean?
Well, the growth center is that it goes along with it. You know, it's an observation of nature for one thing, and then I think it's sort of social responsibility for the artist, and that sort of develops as you go into it, because the artist is, of course, it's not as esteemed like it once was, but I think the arts are the leader of society. I mean, they come up with the immense amount of reality. There's sort of a check on reality, and so I think, and if you look at your culture, you know, it's Frank Lloyd Wright, or it's different people like that. It's the arts that really capture people, and it's the one that's you can see, and you can sort of test it. And no, I think art's a very tangible, spiritual thing. You know, it may be paintings or sculpture or architecture, and it all goes together. So I've done like courses like that for the docent committee in where was it? Where Taliesin is, in the Taliesin studio of Frank Lloyd Wright. And
so what do you mean by spiritual? What do you mean by spiritual in art? What is that?
Well, it's a changing about your values, basically. In other words, spiritual is just a question of your values. And so, in other words, if you value money first, you know, you probably don't start out to be an artist, and you're interested in other things. You're interested in the feelings behind things and reasons for things and stuff like that. So the artist becomes a student, and he sees that, you know, the other thing is a little bit vain, you know, and of course with art you're dealing with people. I've always taught, and so that's always been very good, you know, when people got turned on to it, and it's effective, you know. And then the art kind of is a witness. It's not theory. It's actually doing something. So it's a very tangible way.
That's the word. It's tangible, and you're saying as an artist, you get to move inside these lifestyles where you free flow from living amongst the so-called peasants, I guess you call it. It's not really true, but you live amongst simple people. But then then the next day you're wining and dining with the people with the tuxedo. So it's an interesting. Explain that as being an artist, how you can go from one. You don't belong to a group. You get to go in and out of all these different segments of society.
Well, that does happen, and so you're rather unique in different places, because I was invited to diplomatic parties and all sorts of things, and masonry and stuff. It's studied, and I've seen it from a completely different point of view, and I found it the people really appreciated hearing it from a different point of view, a little bit more objective.